editorial independence be damned. They've basically bought themselves a lobbyist podcast. For a long while, there was this lingering sense of exceptionalism, and now they're almost being forced to acknowledge that creators have disintermediated them.
Eventually, we won't even use that terminology, just be like, this is just how content is made.
Hello and welcome to the Attention Shift. This week, OpenAI has bought itself a podcast, and DAZN and the Daily Mail have both decided that creators aren't actually the competition. They might be their future journalists. And the Reuters Institute put a number on what we already know. 70% of publishers are a little bit worried about the attention moving fastest towards creators. We've got a comms-heavy podcast today, haven't we? Without further delay, you know the drill. We've got 5 stories coming up, 5 minutes each. Eduardo, how are you? You ready?
Very good, thanks. Let's go. The biggest events of the year are gold mines for publishers, and Display's new research shows you exactly how to cash in. We analysed over 30,000 comments across the US election, the World Cup, the Met Gala and more, uncovering 8 ways audiences engage, so you can package, price and sell your content and own the conversation, whether you have broadcast rights or not. Head to display.com insights to download Harness the Hype today.
Let's go. So NFL, first story. It's given all of its 32 clubs permission to become media companies. Well, we've seen them edging in that direction anyway. But what it actually means is that they are allowing them to do much more on their own social channels. I mean, a lot of them have been doing it by the back door anyway. But doesn't this just show how actually a lot of leagues and rights owners have actually been precluded from doing a lot of stuff with their own content that they really would have liked to have been doing for a lot longer?
Yeah, definitely. I did a bit of research a while back when I was looking at the NFL teams and what they were doing and what they were not doing, just across YouTube, and there was a gap when you compared it to other teams and leagues around the world, and this explains it certainly in more detail. But like you said, to a certain degree, some have been doing this via the back door for a while now, and the reality is the NFL have realised that they can't, effectively, by holding them back and trying to control them in terms of what they could do, was probably starting to impact the NFL in general themselves. So I think it's not before time that allows them to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it shows how it's not just about broadcast now. There's 2 things. It shows about it's not just about broadcast. And we all know, we say it till we're blue in the face, broadcast is still important, but increasingly less so, proportionally. You've got all of these other ways of communicating, of reaching audience and engaging audiences, some of whom don't even engage with broadcast at all. So it throws into relief how a lot of these rights deals are actually beginning to hold back leagues and rights owners now. And because there is so many different rights that are available. Even the terminology. I mean, I used to look at rights deals back in the day, and even the terminology feels not fit for purpose a lot of times these days. You talk about digital rights. Well, what does that mean? Streaming rights, what does that mean? And alongside that, it does call into question this idea about exclusivity, because we always used to talk about exclusive rights in deals. But then you've got people who are doing exclusive broadcast deals, and then exclusive streaming deals, and then exclusive digital deals. Well, what does that mean? That means your content's everywhere. That's not exclusive then, is it?
And also, there's this understanding now of what is a right, because I guess if you think about it from a content perspective, the rights have always been very much about the game, the match, the event in itself.
Yeah, the live stuff.
And now that obviously there's this realisation, which we've been banging on about for a number of years now, that actually access is a right. And not only the access, but access to whom, where, when, at what time, those kind of things can be, I guess, cut up and used. So part of doing this is that understanding that I guess the people within the teams themselves are probably the best at working out what's the right kind of content for the right kind of people at the right time. They've all been. I saw some of the Kansas City Chiefs, for instance, have employed someone who's, I think the directors. So I think the role is director of culture and creators, whose job it is literally to work with these people who've now become the authority to lots of different micro communities. And clearly, obviously, even though it's only been announced publicly now, clearly the NFL teams knew that it was going to get over the line. The fact that that the Chiefs did that, and a few other teams have started doing the same now as well. Now, they're understanding that there is a tremendously fragmented world. One size doesn't fit all, and actually, the media companies that they work with, whether that's a national level, whether that's a local level, can still get tremendous value out of access. But at the same time, the teams need to be able to do what the teams need to be able to do too, because they're trying to build on owned ground.
Yeah, but and it also feeds into the valuation of the NFL's rights, as in at league level, right? I mean, rumours are they're seeking a 58% uplift in their deal, in their annual rights fees. Moffitt-Nathanson estimated that they were looking for at least 50% plus uplift in their next round of negotiations, and they're bringing it forward. They're looking to lock potential partners in well into the 2030s. You can only justify that uplift if you've got successful teams who are reaching and engaging fans. So you have to empower those teams to become those media companies and to take those digital rights and be able to unlock that value and that fandom at that local level, because the NFL can't do it at that simultaneously at that super high level. So
they're too macro to be able to do it on their own.
Too macro. Yeah. So, but it shows that it's part of the value creation. It goes down to that social media manager, that culture and creator manager.
Yeah.
They are cultivating value, and it's quite nice to see that the NFL have acknowledged that, and actually, purely not altruistically, it's also because they need to keep justifying bigger asks for the rights. But at least it's empowering those local teams to actually start creating value with their fans, and also makes those people who have cultivated those communities across social media even more valuable within the whole chain. So I'm hoping that they're getting a good nod to that.
Yeah, look, an American sports franchise as well. I've always been really, really good at activating sponsors at a local level. Local level for them is at a national level for us, right? Because of the scale of it.
Sure.
And Alex Coppola has been talking for quite some time about how they needed to start thinking about the content in and around the game, the long form, and how they are monetizing that. He writes a really good newsletter that we'll get Will to put in the show notes as well, if people who are watching and listening to this don't already know Alex's work. But he's been pushing for this for some time now, so it's interesting this has come along. It's going to give him plenty to talk about, that's for sure.
Good stuff.
Cool. Right then, so we've done that. Next one. So OpenAI have just bought a show that basically covers OpenAI. So they've acquired TPBN. It's a daily live tech talk show. It was launched in March 2025 by founders John Coogan and Jody Hayes. Mm-hmm. It averages about 70,000 viewers per episode, and it was on track to generate 30 million in revenue this year, which is most from advertising. So it's going to sit inside OpenAI now rather than outside like it has been doing. And it's interesting that the world's most powerful AI company just bought a media outlet that scrutinised it. What could possibly go wrong, Joe?
Well, I'm guessing there won't be as much scrutiny going forward. Yeah. I mean, I heard a lot of people commentating about this, and I was looking into it. Even Matt Bellany was talking about it, and it's not even a massive podcast, but it's a very focused tech bro podcast. Yeah. And they seem to be able to attract the big hitters. So it's clearly essential listening in Silicon Valley amongst a certain cohort of founders. So they've had Zuckerberg on, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't on track to make a huge amount of money. They've paid a couple of $100 million for it. That's pocket change, I guess, for OpenAI.
The
thing that I thought was interesting, I mean, at a time when regulatory scrutiny is coming for AI, it might buy them sway with influential people. Clearly, as I said before, they managed to get the movers and the shakers onto the pod, so they're in the right circles. It's a very small, very focused podcast that speaks to the right people. That's going to benefit OpenAI when the regulatory crosshairs start honing in on them. And the other thing that struck me when I was thinking about it is, I mean, it's basically outsourcing your PR. I mean, really, they've bought themselves a bit of a mouthpiece. That's it. It's a PR. I mean, is this the start of people saying, do you know what, we don't need an internal PR team. We'll just go and buy a podcast in the same way that, people buy YouTube channels or, could be.
Well, some would say it's the same reason that we decided to do a podcast to talk about the things that interest us, right? We're just not OpenAI burning through billions, and we've obviously a number of things
Everybody
going on.
got a
Not
podcast.
exactly. Not everyone in the world loves some of the things that we're doing. I think. Look, I think on one hand you look at it and go, it makes total sense. This, like, they're not bothered about scale with this; they're bothered about reaching the right people, and supposedly this podcast is reaching the right people. So it's a B2B podcast at the end of the day, and it gets to everything they need to get to. Now, I'd imagine they don't need it to go any bigger than that because they're ultimately influencing the mindset of the people they need to.
It's not scale. It's not scale. It's about influence.
So in the grand scheme of things, for most people, a couple of $100 million is a lot of money. For them, with their burn, like you say, it's pocket change. And it, ultimately, if it reaches and influences the people that they need it to, it makes total sense for them. But it is just very, very interesting. Just in the world of brands, how they are realising more and more now that they can actually own the media narrative rather than relying perhaps on the way they would have use media to advertise, even in the recent past. And you see more and more doing that now.
It makes the notion of editorial independence a little bit greyer, doesn't it? You know, editorial independence be damned when you own the podcast that formerly used to question some of your motives. I mean, really, would Zuckerberg go on to there now, given that those two presenters now report to the board of OpenAI? I don't know. Anyway,
yeah, but
I don't suppose this will be the last time we see something like this. Whether it's at OpenAI level, I mean, again, we've just been talking about the NFL. Be interesting to see whether other big entities, FIFA, acquire a podcast as their mouthpiece. Not beyond the realms of possibility.
Well, this certainly opens up that door for that kind of thinking, right? But also back on your point as well, would Zuckerberg go on? If Zuckerberg feels like he can get something out of it, he'll go on that podcast.
Oh, God, yeah.
We've been proved this before when supposedly some of the tech leaders don't like each other and all of a sudden they do something together. It's almost like a little bit like Blur and Oasis back in the day when the pretend battle that they were having. Like, are these tech leaders really falling out, or actually does it just suit them to keep their name in the narrative constantly that to their investors it looks like they are the leaders? I'm massively cynical about most of these things that go on these days.
You are quite right to be, as am I.
If you're a creator who wants to build a career like the Sidemen or Emma Chamberlain, here's one to watch. You've built the audience, you've got the revenue. How do you take to the next level? Right now, everything you've built depends on you showing up. To break out, you've got to look beyond the next upload. The creators building real businesses aren't just making better content. They're building assets that work without them. We've mapped out 4 phases which will turn you from a creator to a media empire. Read the guide, start building beyond the upload.
Next story. DAZN. We couldn't have a podcast without talking about creators, could we? I mean,
we've got a few in here now. If anyone's thinking of leaving now, don't. It's all about creators from here on in.
So DAZN has launched Playmakers, which is a global creator program. Probably read about it in the sports trades over the last couple of weeks. So this it's giving sports creators access to DAZN's platform, events, merch, affiliate links. I mean, smart and interesting move by DAZN, because it's interesting. I was speaking to DAZN last week because they are joining me next week for Stream TV Europe in Lisbon, where you will be also, Eduardo.
I shall be in the crowd listening intently, making notes.
Yeah. We're talking about the challenges of being a sports super app within the wider ecosystem. It's going to be a great session. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
But when I was talking to them, they were saying, you know, we can't not embrace creators if we are going to justify the subscription cost of DAZN, obviously, but also we've got to try and bring sports fans in, and we've got to keep them. And creators is a really sticky part of that. So it makes complete sense that they would launch this creator program along, you know, in and amongst all of the other initiatives and innovation that DAZN is really pushing for. Because we know, we've said this, you know, sports fans tend to believe creators a little bit more than the broadcaster, the BBC, the streamer, whoever is bringing them the sport. So that level of trust and that parasocial relationship that we've all developed with our favourite creators over the last 10, 15 years through platforms like YouTube is now becoming really, really important to someone like DAZN, who's got to fight ever harder to justify what they do and who they are and to keep those fans on that platform.
Yeah, and also, like I said, the reason you do this is that you don't just have to rely on advertising to be able to get the message across. Because look, they could go and advertise with a lot of these creators as well, but they're going, well, we'll give you some content in return for being part of the narrative, which effectively becomes way cheaper than if you were just going to purely advertise around it. And you're absolutely right. These creators, as we keep saying, have now become the authority to lots and lots of audiences. And I know there'll be people now watching or listening to this saying, no, I don't watch those creators. Like, it's not. If you're saying that, it's not for you. This is not about you. They're trying to reach the people that they can't reach at the moment. Not the one. They already reach the ones they can. They already get in front of them. It's the ones that they can't, and that's why you see more and more. And this, like I said, we've got quite a bit to come on to in this as well. But we're seeing this all over the show, and you see some of the stuff they've done. You know, they went and acquired rights to Kings League as well, which is very much creator led.
Yeah.
In terms of distribution, or has been certainly from the start. They did a lot of stuff around the World Cup with FIFA as well, where they worked with creators as well. So that was a bit of a dip in the toe. Sorry, around the Club World Cup, bit of the toe in the water for them to see how it would work. Obviously, the KSI thing the other weekend, where they're effectively, you know, they have rights to the National League, but they were happy for KSI to co-stream it. They see the value from it, and anyone listening from DAZN, if you want to give us some stats as well, we'd lovingly use those stats in one of our episodes and talk about that, the success that you're seeing from it as well, and how you are converting, I guess, from rented ground to owned ground. How are you then thinking about how those people that you're speaking to across these creators are then turning into subscribers? Love to see that.
I mean, this is, when you read into it, this is not just a campaign. Actually, they're starting at foundational level with this.
Yeah.
So they're building this into DAZN's infrastructure, which I think is very telling. So it feels to me like then it might change how it looks and feels, but this is something that is pretty foundational for them. They are going to have a creator strategy that is embedded into DAZN, whether KSI is streaming Dagenham and Redbridge or not. So this, and they're giving them incentives, which is interesting, because that will lock them in. We know how hard it is for creators, particularly if they're starting now, not the ones that have been doing it for years, but particularly the ones that are starting now, to scale and to monetize, to make a business and a job out of it. It's bloody hard. We speak to them all the time, you and I. It's really hard. So actually giving them an incentive and a framework is really interesting. I mean, ultimately, you know, these creators are your journalists, your broadcasters, your pundits of the future. So actually bake them into what DAZN does, and then it gets really interesting. And of course, it gives you a distribution army. It gives you a creator that speaks a language that appeals to a certain demographic in a certain area, and you can scale that. It's not just your one creator or your one pundit or your one commentator that has to try and appeal to everyone. We know that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And then, so actually it brings us nicely on to the next story then, which is Daily Mail Group. So they've actually now got what they're termed as creators on the payroll, so actually working as journalists within the organisation. So they started this back in October 2025, but then there's a new story that's come out now where they start talking about some of the successes around this. Whereas instead of partnering with these creators, and let's assume the previous story was about how content in return for access to audiences, Daily Mail are actively paying creators to be on the payroll to effectively create content on behalf of, which is, again, another step towards that integration, but understanding that, and I guess agreeing that these creators talk in a certain kind of way, and probably they're the best people to maybe take the message forward to certain demographics. Yeah,
it's a welcome move past the old creator slapping. I promise I won't say that again. I say it quite a lot. But this acknowledgement by publishers and broadcasters and news outlets that just doing a creator campaign is too transient, and actually there's eventually you run out of creators, and when you start seeing the same ones hawking their services around, you realize that maybe they're not actually as invested in what you're trying to sell as you are, and that comes through, so that inauthenticity shines through. So actually bringing them in, incentivizing them more, embedding them in the Daily Mail's case, start teaching them a bit of journalism skills. I mean, no matter what you think about Daily Mail Group as a news outlet, its roots are in traditional journalism.
Yeah.
And a lot of creators would welcome a little bit more formal training in that. Given that they're connecting with audiences, that's probably something they can teach more old-fashioned journalists in Daily Mail Group. But there is still a skill to, developing a story, to articulating it in a certain way. Yeah. So I'm welcoming this trend, and it will come up in the next story as well, this trend of actually not just using a creator as a mouthpiece, it's too superficial, but actually embedding them more in the same way as DAZN has done with sports, Daily Mail Group is doing with news. Bringing them in, they've already cut their teeth on growing and scaling audiences in digital spaces or in UGC platforms, but actually then start bringing them in and start giving them the actual solid skills. I've seen it happen actually with someone who used to work for a TikTok news organisation. She was their sports journalist, Emma Middleton. She's awesome. And she ended up going to work for BBC Sport and was doing some stuff on TikTok. And now they've taken her on board. And she does some really great stuff around sports events for their kind of younger TikTok first kind of sports journalism. And it's absolutely the way to go, because then she's actually learning with an organisation like the BBC, but she's still using what she's always done, what she did when she worked on TikTok. And those skills, self-shooting, editing, the way that she constructs and creates her comms. So I think it's a really interesting move.
And again, media's been going that way for a long, long time now, where that ability as an individual to be able to do all of those things yourselves. And I think, when you marry that together with an ability to actually know how to talk to an audience, which is very different to how the newsreaders would have done it in the past. And look, they've seen some success as well. They've done one of their TikTok series has seen over 300 million views. And as we know, views can be vanity anyway, but the reality is it's around those views. They've managed to get brands on board with that, and they've monetized that. So they're obviously seeing value from it. And I know they did a campaign as well with Primark on TikTok that generated 1.3 million views and 30,000 likes, which they were happy with as well. So it's clearly working for them. Big question is, so what happens when they help to train someone who's just starting out, that knows how to connect to audience, but needs all of the, let's say, the skills, tools to be able to do this? They build a personal following of 2 million and they realise they can make more money elsewhere as an independent.
But hasn't that always been the risk with employees?
Yeah, is there anything wrong with that? I mean, you've just got to have a pipeline of more coming along, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
some
no
are going to do
different
that.
It's no different to when presenters that used to be aligned to a certain TV channel, they were an ITV presenter or a BBC one, and they hopped over to the other side, and everybody would be like, "Ooh!" I mean, it's no different to that. And this line between journalist and creator has been getting blurred for a long while. And some say would be to, it's had a material kind of a bad effect on actually the quality of journalism. But in a way, this is a pushback and saying, no, actually, let's bring them on board and let's start imparting some of the knowledge that we have as a news publisher, and that when we can bring the two together. And I think at a time when trust and curation, particularly in news, is going to be sought out and valuable in amongst the sea of AI slop, actually now is the time to start doing that as a publisher, whether you're the BBC or Daily Mail or whether you're DAZN. You start actually embedding with creators saying, no, we know our stuff. You can trust our voice. And this is what we're investing in. We're investing in these creators to deliver that to you.
It's funny. So I think eventually whether it's a journalist or a creator, we won't even use that terminology. Just be like, this is just how content is made down and how ultimately you connect with audiences. So it feels like we're starting to move into that space.
Yeah, 100%. Agree. Okay, well, I mean, on a related theme, we were talking about Reuters, and this is something, because we'd spotted this as an emerging theme, and then as part of the research for this podcast, because, contrary to popular opinion, we do actually research it, don't we, Ed?
We've been about 10 stories that we decided not to use this morning.
Yeah, we found some info that had been published earlier this year by the Reuters Institute about how publishers are worrying that they are going to lose their best editorial talent to the creator economy. And it's not just in news. Again, we've seen Gary Lineker go off, become a creator. We've seen Rio Ferdinand do the same. Any number of people who used to be embedded within traditional media are chancing their arm in the creator economy, which, is a concern when you are someone like Reuters or you're a publisher.
Yeah.
So whilst we have spoken about potentially, you're training up people who are going to go off and do something elsewhere, well, I think that's the risk. It's always been the risk that you train employees and they then go and join a rival company. But yes, this confidence confidence in news publishers, we've seen that reducing and eroding over time. I mean, everybody's got an opinion about the BBC, whether their news is biased.
Yeah.
So I think this is perhaps almost a pushback or a hedge against that, is bringing in those authentic voices into the fold as a way to stop that decline in trust. People trust people. Like I said, those parasocial relationships.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily trust BBC News anymore, or Daily Express, or what used to be called the masthead. I'm sure it still is in journalism circles.
Yeah, I mean, also, and the two stories we've just done before, like DAZN and Daily Mail Group, and there's been other recent examples as well, right? Like I said, we missed this originally, but then we were looking at it again as we were preparing for this, and it's kind of like it in a lot of ways, if the decisions that people have been making recently, if they'd not seen this probably would have backed up why they were doing what they were doing in terms of research that had been conducted. Because when you start to see that, you know, search traffic's down to news sites, and I know there's been a few casualties across the digital media industry because Google's just not been driving the traffic, and also the fact that, you know, Facebook's not been passing on the referrals and X has not been passing on the referrals. Like, you're talking like 33% down globally for Google and 43% down for Facebook and 46% down for X, where a lot of these digital news outlets were relying on that traffic and they've not been getting it anymore. They've just had to find another way. And I think that realisation is like, whether they fear that creators have been stealing their audiences or not, they're not. It's just ultimately it's how media's evolved. And there's a place for everyone. It's just different than what it was before.
Yeah, and I think it's been a bit of a check to the collective ego of some news publishers and sports broadcasters, and in the sense that, you know, for a long while they sat at the top of the tree as the only voice, or the trusted voice, the authority on bringing you news and bringing you sport. And then along come creators and take that away. And I mean, goodness, without wishing to offend anybody who I might have worked with in the past, you know, but I think for a long while there was this lingering sense of exceptionalism, and now they're almost being forced to acknowledge that creators have disintermediated them. And rather than becoming creators, that you've got to find this space in the middle where you learn from creators how they disintermediated that relationship, how they went and scaled communities and connected with audiences that perhaps traditional publishers and broadcast lost sight of. But then also don't just copy them, because then you just look like, you know, your dad dancing, you know, okay, boomer.
Yeah.
You can't just become a creator. But actually, there is this knowledge transfer the other way, that remembering what made you important in the first place as a journalism outlet or a news outlet or as a sports broadcaster, and then figure out how you can, you know, embody that in creators, how you can teach creators that, and find this space in the middle. Because I come back to trust and curation. Trust and curation is going to become so hotly contested and valuable in the next few years, because people are beginning to, I mean, if trust has fallen already, trust is falling, it's plummeting at an ever faster rate now of what you can see and read and believe. So I think there's an opportunity.
I think what creators have pushed publishers to think about more is deeply about is, you know, what is the voice? How can they show their audience again that they are authentic in what they do? And how can they have a direct audience connection? I think often you see media has gone down the road of talking at people, where ultimately for creators it's always about having a conversation with people that
it's with
people,
it's not
it's with them, and that their opinions are valid too, and then that they act on those opinions, and then there's that loop keeps on going, and ultimately that drives the quality of the discussion anyway, where for a long time we just got into this mode of just keep sending messages but not really caring about what's coming back. And I think that's where they're stealing a march, and we are now starting to see the content evolving again to what the expectations of the audience. Yes, we want the facts, but also we want our opinions to be heard on those facts if we agree or disagree with it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is probably one of the things when I think back to the BBC, you know, the BBC, for all its faults, is still very much trusted globally. And this is why I think it's really interesting, their recent announcement of the partnership with YouTube that expands into sport, it expands into kids' channels. They're launching 7 new kids' channels on YouTube. This acknowledgement that the BBC is losing that reputation, that trust, that brand standing in the world because of its reluctance to move off owned and operated channels and into these spaces where creators live and into digital media. And it's almost forced their hand, but actually it has to happen, because if you are to even maintain that relevance and resonance and trust as the BBC or as DAZN or whomever else, Daily Mail, you have to lean into those spaces, and you've got to start figuring out how you show up there and articulate that trust and that value and all of that editorial that you've spent the last 100 years perfecting. How do you then apply it in this digital world where creators own the relationship with your audience? So, yeah, I think it's... we're in a transition period. I don't think anybody's really worked it out yet. But it's certainly positive direction of travel as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we'll include a link to the report in the show notes as well. But like I say, because we do some planning with this podcast as well. The reason we wanted to finish on this,
journalists, Ed.
yeah. The reason we wanted to finish with this is because if you look at it, this report already leans into what the NFL are now doing through building teams for media companies. It leans into where OpenAI have gone by narrative control. It leans into DAZN building creator armies, Daily Mail turning journalists into influencers. It brings it all together. So, look, it's well worth a read, and we will include it in the show notes if you've not seen it already. So, Joe.
What an eloquent wrap-up there, Ed. You're getting good at this.
I'm not sure I can manage it again next time, but I'll give it a go.
Well, this has been the Attention Shift, and if you've enjoyed it, you should let us know. We want to hear from you. Our email address is hello@attentionshift.media, and come on, talk to us. We want to hear what you think. And if you want to feature as a guest, let us know, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I've been Joe Redfern, and he has been...
Ed Abyss.